Thing, and here we go. Hello everyone and welcome to CSM Mastermind. My name is Andrew Marks from Success Coaching, and we're back with our monthly live event for CSMs. Wherever you are around the world listening to this live or the recording, we've got another great conversation with a great group of customer success practitioners. For those of you that haven't participated in one of these events before, this is a live call and we're going to dig into a single topic that we think is very relevant, very pertinent to customer success managers. Whatever company you work for, wherever you are in the world, whatever size customer you deal with, we try and pick topics that are going to be practically useful for you. There's a lot of thought leadership out there. There's a lot of theory about how to do customer success. And this series allows us to focus on the practical and give you real world advice, tips, techniques, tricks, and experience from those out in the wild that are practicing customer success on a daily basis. To do that, we invite 3 participants from the customer success world from our extensive network. These are people, for the most part, that have been recommended to us as being great at their craft, and we ask them to share their own experiences. I'm very excited to welcome our expert panel for today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then I'll introduce the topic that we're going to be talking about. So let's get started with Sarah Jo. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, good day everyone. Sarah Jo Neubauer. I am a Senior Customer Success Manager at LinkedIn, specifically for LinkedIn Learning Solutions. LinkedIn Learning is an online platform where you can upskill in over 14,000 courses in business, creative, or technology spaces. And so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Sarah Jo. Dimple, you're up.
Hi everyone, I'm Dimple Villamoria, and I'm a Customer Success Manager at Servata. And Servata is really innovating in the space of helping advertisers measure brand lift. And essentially my role is, once a client is closed and won by the sales team, I'm helping them onboard and really monitor them throughout the life cycle of the partnership. And so yeah, I'm actually living the topic today, which we'll get into, but this is my 3-month anniversary today. So excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dimple. And last but not least, our Philadelphia-based Cowboys fan, Ashley.
Hi guys, my name is Ashley McElwain. I am the lead customer success manager for a global team of customer success specialists that are doing IoT technology for cleaning efficiency in buildings with a company called Essity. My fun tagline is that I get to say we work on software for toilet paper. Very exciting stuff. I've been doing this now for this company for about 3 years, and really looking forward to the conversation today.
Great, thanks, Ashley. Very much a global team. We actually just had a number of your folks at our workshop in London.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you had 5 or 6 of them in London.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Great. Thanks, everyone. So let's get to the topic for today. LinkedIn has been rating the customer success manager role as one of the top 3 fastest growing job in their jobs report for the last few years. And in its 2019 State of the Customer Success Profession report, Gainsight cited that CSM titles increased 8x from 2015 to 2018, a rate of 176% year over year. So our topic today is quite relevant with all this growth and movement and job creation and customer success. What do you all believe are the most important things to focus on when starting a new CSM role or position? Who wants to start?
I'll go ahead and get started.
Go for it.
Yeah, so this is Dimple. So I would say when you're starting a new customer success role, it's really important. One, you're going to be driving all of the conversations with your clients. So really being able to understand fully what your company does and being able to master the pitch, because you're going to have to repeat it multiple times within client meetings. I would also say that it's important to work very closely with your sales team. So they're the ones that are going to hold all the information and knowledge of each partnership that you're working with. So if you can get all the details from them in advance of getting started with the partnership and the kickoff call and the onboarding process, it's going to really help make that whole process quite seamless. And then the last thing I just want to quickly interject is really it's important to get organized and have a way that you're going to be tracking all the relationships that you're managing, your deliverables. Some people use Gainsight, some people use Salesforce. So just developing your own system, I think, is very important.
Uh-oh, we lost Ashley.
Oh no. Well, I'll pick up the conversation if that's all right. And
Yes, hopefully she'll jump back in.
Fantastic. I'm going to build on a lot of what Dimple said and kind of distill it into 3 P's: people, process, and product. So you need to know the product that you're working on and just really approach, have this learning mindset and growth mindset to know everything possible about the product. And to do that, really building relationships with people and people internally, your sales partners, your product team, and your fellow customer success team. Building internal relationships early on, grabbing a quick 15 minutes with nearly everybody on these teams when you first get started and build those relationships. That's going to be a really healthy foundation for you as you continue down your path. And then process. So what are some internal systems and tools that you need to become efficient with to do your job well?
Excellent.
Ashley, you're back.
Ashley's back, but she's not, we don't have her, doesn't look like her microphone is, I'll let our big toe Ashley work with Ashley to figure that out. Cool. So along that same line, what kind of advice would you offer somebody who's transitioning into customer success from another role or department like sales or support? It's one thing to come in new and fresh, either as a new customer success manager or coming from another CSM role, but what about coming from a different type of role?
Well, I think that when you're coming into a different role, into customer success, you really need to put on your customer success hat and think about that your client is your priority, and really be able to work with them and advocate for them throughout the process. I think, when you're first getting started, it's really important for you to, one, ask questions of everyone. Like, no question is a dumb question. Make sure that you're scheduling one-on-ones and getting all of that information that you need. I also think that as a CSM, even though you're owning the communication, it's also important for you to understand the details, the weeds of how different things work, whether it's tagging, ad operations, the survey design side of things. I'm just speaking to things that are relevant for my role. It's going to be very important for you to understand those details and be able to speak to those and manage the process.
So understanding the specific, the details and nuances of the product, not just the product conceptually, but the things that play a role in a customer success or failure with a product.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. What do you think, Sarah?
Well, I have very relevant and recent experience in this very topic. I started in this role 6 months ago, and I intentionally transitioned from the nonprofit space in working in learning and development and professional training and development. And so really identified, the work for me in coming into customer success was identifying transferable skills and thinking about, all of us bring a unique career path experience in your job search, and while you're interviewing, your job is to really identify transferable skills to land the next job, right? And understand how those skills can really be leveraged and expanded upon in a customer success role. And a lot of us, and a lot of you listening and thinking about this, that's kind of your homework, is if you have, work in communicating with customers, what are some of those skills you need? Verbal and written skills, presentation skills, relationship building skills, problem solving, change management. Those are all like soft skills that we all have through our work experience that are immediately usable in a customer success role.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
You're
I'm sideways. Oh, even better.
that's there we go. There we go. Okay. You're back. Yay. All right. So, Ashley, we didn't get to you on the first question. So
Sure.
what advice can you give somebody who is, what are the top 3 things that a new CSM should focus on within the first 30, 60, 90 days of a CS role?
Absolutely. With the risk of repeating something someone else has already said because it got booted, but from my perspective, I think the most important thing is that you take a people first approach, right? Build the relationships, capitalize on the experience of the people around you because you have that there as a resource for yourself, and make sure that you are learning from their learnings first. Second, I think understanding the tools that are at your disposal is really, really critical. I might be a little bit partial in this department because I own the responsibility for enablement tools. So of course I see the importance of it, but I think really understanding what is there for you to help you be the best, most effective and efficient CSM you can be, and really understanding what the capabilities and goals of those tools are is really critical. And then I think the third is make sure you understand the industry of your customers. It's pretty rare for us as CSMs or for people coming into CSM to have really deep knowledge of the industry that we're going to be working with. In the world of SaaS and other software and other even non-software issues, you often have some industry learnings to catch up on, right? Understand why the customer's use case is what it is, and really making sure you have the opportunity to truly understand their perspective. I think if you have the opportunity to actually go spend time on site with customers to do that learning, I find that to be really valuable as well. So that was my 3.
And that's a great point. It's not just about learning about the product, which both Sarah Jo and Dimple referred to, but it's that understanding the customer's business helps you connect the dots between the product and how do you achieve their definition of success.
Absolutely.
So let's see. So what about one of the challenges that we have in customer success is having enough time to do everything that needs to get done. Right? How do you what kind of advice can you give a new CSM to take ownership of their schedule?
I'll jump in real quick. I've been asked this question also in like on a daily basis. I ask myself about this, and I would say the main thing that I think about is that it's okay to say no. And the power of no is something that's very undervalued and underutilized, I think. And I think when I say no, I don't mean like, somebody throws a meeting invite on your calendar, like salesperson wants to pull you into like a 6 p.m. meeting with Australia. You make sure that you're following the processes. So has the account actually been assigned to you as a CSM? Are you actually going to be working on this? And a lot of times the CSM is the one that should be scheduling the meetings according to their schedule. And so I think that just utilizing that word and embracing that is very important. I also think from a client perspective, a lot of times clients are going to want one-off reports or ad hoc requests. I think a lot of times it's important to maybe like divert their attention. So for example, if they want a report or something and that they can access that information maybe in a slightly different way on the dashboard that's available through your platform, direct them there. Make them like empower themselves so that you're not being the bottleneck every time.
Well, and that goes into a whole, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I was going to just say, I totally agree. I did have some notes around this, and Dimple, they were basically exactly what you said. I think really something that can be culturally difficult is saying no to customers, whereas saying no to internal people is maybe sometimes not as hard.
Right.
Actually, it's fun to some degree.
Yeah, it is. But I think, especially if you're someone who excels in your craft, you are going to have a hard time wanting to say no to anyone because you want to be able to share your knowledge, your experience, that kind of stuff. But I've learned over many years of not saying no and being really bad at that, that you're not actually helping anyone by doing that in a lot of cases. And I have a really strong feeling now in my wise old age, right? of saying like, I could have done them a disservice by holding their hand or helping them along. Whereas if I had led them to a self-service or in some cases to experience their own mistakes, they would have done better in the long run. So.
And it's natural for especially for folks who are drawn to customer success. You have are typically people with really high EQ.
Yeah,
right?
And people who want to fix people's problems.
Right,
so,
you want to solve problems. You want to be there to help.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It's hard to say no, but you need to be able to say no.
Yeah.
And there are also ways of saying no, but making it into a teaching moment, as you both referred to, right? And we also, Dimple, you started to kind of go down the path of the whole of taking a much more consultative approach. To explain to me what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
Explain to me why you want this information. And then I can help you help yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to expand a little bit just on the tactical part and something I learned early on. I came from a culture before where you kept your calendar visible to anyone. And I turned that on when I got here. I was like, yeah, take a look, everyone, like look at the details. And I immediately was told like, you may want to just control that a little bit more and not share as much. And so depending upon the culture again, but I also learned just to set boundaries. To Ashley and Dimple's point, I mean, really be clear what's the earliest you will schedule a client call and stand by those boundaries. What's the latest that you will stick around? Are there days that you will not book client meetings? Is that a possibility? I typically don't book client meetings on Fridays, sometimes not even on Mondays, so that I really have some solid time during the day to catch up. And of course, there will always be exceptions. And then I would also say to offer to be the one to calendar meetings and to control the calendar invites for some of your clients as well. And then to always, of course, keep your calendar up to date and block out time for lunch or coffee breaks, internal standing meetings, things like that.
Don't just block out time for lunch and coffee breaks. I actually block out time for
workout.
This is my stuff to get done block of time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm surprised when I tell people that, like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm like, really? I've been doing that for a long time. Yeah, I block out every Monday morning from, 8 to 10. And that's where I get all of our admin out of the way. And then, if I know I need to finish a project, I block out time in my schedule. When I have people that have my calendar link's public and they'll go ahead and book time. And it makes it a lot easier to just allocate that time. And then to your point, Sergio, if I need to make an exception, I'm the one that makes the exception, not somebody else making it for me.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's
I think that it really goes a long way too, and helping the people that you work with have the right expectations as well. So I do the same exact thing. I book out time. I actually I'm a super nerd, so my calendar is color coded. The people closest to me, they know what those colors mean and how flexible they are, right? But that's like a privileged kind of thing, right? And interestingly, Sarah Jo, I actually do take the approach of being very, very transparent with my calendar. It's public, it's wide open, which is not the culture at my company. So that's probably why I do it, right? I'm a little bit opposite in that way most of the time. But I think it really goes a long way to people understanding when I say no, why I'm saying no, right? They see, and I always try to say no, but. I never don't follow up with, here's your other alternative, or here's another person you should talk to because I think they can help you more or better, or, here's a great article that explains it for you, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I want to dovetail on that a little bit and to Andrew's remarks as well. You said, take care of admin Monday morning from 8 to 10. Yeah. I think this kind of zooming out is around energy management as well for peak performance and for high performance. And so if you know yourself and you're aware of, oh, I'm a really more strategic thinker in the morning, when I block my calendar to take care of some of those writing or project management kind of stuff versus calendaring and follow-ups maybe can happen later in the afternoon when, you know, you're maybe thinking about that other cup of coffee. So energy management's part of that as well.
That's a great point. It's actually a topic we have in our level 3 certification. We talk about that very specific thing. Block the time out in your calendar where if you got to get stuff done, you know that your head is in the right space.
Absolutely.
Right. I love the color coding. I got to ask, Ashley, is one of the colors cowboy blue?
Several of the colors are varieties of blue, but being stuck with the sort of palette that Outlook offers, I didn't get quite cowboy's blue.
Got it. Okay. I just had to ask. So great. Those are some great tips and techniques and thoughts around owning your schedule. And you do need to own your schedule. And it doesn't matter if you're a senior CSM or you're a junior CSM, you're starting a role, you're well into a role. You do need to own your schedule. Don't let others take control of your schedule. And it's also, by the way, it's also really important. We touched on it, but we didn't call out the fact that there are rules to engagement. Right, and you should make sure that those rules are either explained to you or they're established while you're there. Here are the rules of engagement with sales. Here are the rules of engagement with marketing, with engineering, what have you. And this is not just your rules; it's their rules too. It's a two-way street. We want to respect the rules. So next question, you know, in your opinion, what specific skills or traits should a new CSM focus on acquiring or improving to be good at this role?
I'll jump in real quick. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dimple.
So I was going to say, in terms of the skills that are important to acquire, I think, you know, one is really important to understand and really be able to assess out, like understand the situation that's going on with each relationship. So for example, if you find that there's a lot of email correspondence going on and it's just not helping, like it's leading to more and more confusion, I think it's really important to know when to pick up the phone. I think the phone is a very underutilized resource, especially in this day and age with everything's online and through everything's virtual. I think you'll be surprised when you pick up the phone and call a customer, especially when they find that they've been confused and maybe frustrated a little bit, and you pick up the phone, it's sort of a sigh of relief. Like you can clearly understand what it is that they're frustrated with or being challenged with, and really be able to address those concerns. And I think that sometimes through email, you don't really understand their tone of voice. You don't understand, you know, you may, like maybe in your email when you write it, it may come across maybe curt or blunt or whatever. But then when you get on the phone, it's like suddenly things alleviate. And so I just wanted to stress that point.
Well, Dimple, if you write an email and send it to me and Sarah Jo and Ashley, our inside, the voices in our head are, all three of us are reading that email differently.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And that's to your point. That's one of the problems with email is that it's content, but you leave out the context. And so I 100% agree with you. Pick up the phone and call people. And that's not just with customers though. We also tend to, except for folks that are 100% pure remote, I see people sending email who sit next to each other in queues. Like, oh my God, get up and go walk and go talk to somebody.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think a lot of that goes along the lines of being able to build rapport with your customer. I don't think that you can build rapport with your customers over email, like picking up the phone if they're local, especially if they're local, suggesting in-person meetings, grabbing coffee, lunch, because that's really, I think at the end of the day, people want to do business with the people they like and they trust. And the only way to build that trust is to have as much face time as possible, whether it's through the phone or obviously in person, if that's possible.
I totally agree with that. I've actually been up against a challenge lately where everyone's been trying to move towards more low touch interactions, more spending less time traveling and visiting customers and things like that. And I think it's a really fine balance between, yes, you may take more time out of your schedule to travel to see your customer, to have that one meeting than that you would have taken to have that same meeting on the phone. But the rapport that you build allows you to have those low touch interactions going forward in an effective manner that wouldn't have been possible had you not had that cup of coffee or that in-person meeting. Because I think understanding, so one of the big things I wanted to talk about in the skills part was understanding of social psychology and behavioral analysis and things like that. These are things that I pull on a lot when I'm having my conversations with customers. And I think having that understanding of how a person gestures when they speak, or what their inflections do when they say certain things, allows you to understand their written word so much better in the future. We often joke in our company that if you want to get anything done with our Swedish counterparts, you have to have coffee with them first. And I think that's like super true of a lot of situations. And I think a lot of CSMs are in a really unique position where they don't have that opportunity to have that face-to-face interaction with their customers. And a lot of times they're managing a huge book of customers that they may have never met in person. And I think overcoming that challenge and the ability to overcome that challenge is a characteristic that's unique to a really good CSM. Finding ways to do it over video or whatever it may be, just so that you can still have that relationship is a really unique skill.
Definitely. I was just going to quickly, add on. I would say it's also important, for example, like if you know that the customer that you're talking to, for example, like I'll give you an example. I knew a customer was in Cleveland, and this was the time when the Warriors and the Cavaliers were playing head to head. And I kind of made it like a joke of that, like, hey, the Warriors are really, doing well, and the Cavs aren't. And it just kind of made this like ongoing dialogue that made it fun to talk to them, and they kind of looked forward to it as well. And I just think that if you can find little things that about the customer, maybe where they're going on vacation, or if they have children, you can really talk to those things when you're on those meetings and calls with them.
Yeah, definitely.
I would agree. It's just being human, right? And bringing your authentic self to the call and being human first in these interactions. I love that a lot. And some of the things that came up for me in thinking about this is, and I check myself, and I think it's important for new CSMs and veteran CSMs, is to remember that things change a lot for your customers, and to not assume that things are the status quo or the same, right? And so really validating, hey, last time we talked, is this still true? What else has changed in the business since the last time we've talked, or what's going on for you, so that you're not working with old news or old information, right? So maintaining curiosity and that learning mindset, and always be discovering is really important. And then the last thing I would say is that as part of our team kind of knowledge fest and knowledge check is we're doing a lot of upskilling around executive presence. And so oftentimes on our calls, there might be somebody that is more tactical in the weeds with the product, and then others, there might be some members from the C-suite and more executive. So how can we upskill in really being in the weeds with folks and being able to being in a conversation with a C-level executive? So that's also an important skill that I'm consistently working on.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Yeah. ABCs, always be curious.
Love it.
Right? It's definitely, but yeah, always be curious, asking open-ended questions, being very consultative, 5 whys types of concepts, right? So really being able and prepared to dig deep, all things we actually talk about in our consultative sales module, or our being consultative module, but stuff that especially for CSMs and early, more junior CSMs, people who are early on in their career, and put it on a Post-it note. This is paper, right? And this is something that we used to use to write on, right? And so taking it and putting those notes on actual piece of paper for the millennials out there. This is not you actually, but actually writing stuff down on this and putting it up on your cube next to your, or even honestly use the virtual notepad, the virtual stickies on something like a Mac, and putting that stuff up. There's nothing wrong with that. Always these skills, these ideas, these techniques, just plaster them on your desktop so you remember when you're talking to customers. So can any of you share any missteps or issues that you ran into when you started out in customer success? Anybody have any horror stories, any cautionary tales that they want to throw out there and share with the group?
I would say one of the biggest things that I learned early on, and this is very early on, is that especially when an account is being transitioned to you from, like, for example, you're backfilling for someone that just left, it's really important to have all the information up front. You never want to ask the same question twice.
Yeah.
And that's, I think,
horrible.
Number one,
Yeah.
and you're really going to upset a client if you ask something of them that they just explained and spent the last 6 months talking about to somebody else. And
honestly, Dimple, that's a good best practice, whether you're taking over an account or whether this is a new customer and you're transitioning from sales to post-sales.
Right.
There is nothing that concerns a customer more
Yes.
than you start asking them the same questions they just went over with the sales team.
Right. And I would say, like, that was one of the biggest missteps that I made, and the customer didn't seem very happy with me. And so I learned that lesson from the very beginning and really do my best to make sure that I'm as up to speed, and like Sarah had mentioned in the previous discussion that we had, like, it's okay to say, I'm going to confirm that this is your, targeting audience, or this is, who you're trying to reach, or your seasonality, but not to say, can you tell me what it is? Because that's never a good situation to be in.
Right. Sarah Jo, have you got a story? Yeah.
You do. It's really easy not to do what I did. But in my, because it's so basic, but in my first 60 days, I believe, I had 60 days or so, I believe, yes, where I didn't have live clients. I was onboarding and shadowing a lot of calls. And so I just started to be looped in, and accounts were being transitioned to me. And I had agreed to lead a 7:30 a.m. call, and completely spaced the call. And I'm in my commute and realized that it was like 10 to 8 a.m. And I looked at my calendar and I had a heart attack and realized that I should have been on a call 20 minutes ago leading it. And thankfully my counterpart, who I received the account from, was on the call, was not expecting, of course, to lead it. And I immediately texted him and apologized. Thankfully, again, he was there, but I learned a lot from that lesson, and I'll never do it again. So I look at my calendar the night before and just make sure I know exactly where I'm supposed to be when. And maybe take the call from home, right? So don't do that. And
by the way, that's looking at your calendar the night before. It's actually a technique I use all the time. I look at my calendar for the next day the night before, and it's there's some body of work around how your mind works. If you do that, if you look at your calendar the night before, your mind begins to process the things that you have on your plate the next day, and when you show up to address those issues, those meetings, your mind may have already solved some of the challenges or thought through some of the discussions that you're about to have. So that's actually just a good practice in general. Ashley, have you got a horror story you want to share with us?
I have. It's a bit of a horror story in that I was very surprised to lose an account that I had no inkling was up against a potential loss. Right?
Wow.
I was kind of like, things are great, everything's wonderful, and boom, they pulled right out. Right? Like, outside of the contract terms, it was a big mess, and I kind of was left with my mouth hanging open at the end of that, kind of going, okay, where did I fail? What did I do wrong? And did a lot of sort of post-churn analysis on that to find out that I was doing a really great job with the people that I was interacting with on a daily basis, but we had not achieved what we needed to achieve with the rest of the stakeholders. So I would say my biggest lesson is And this goes back to the sales handoff as well, right? Make sure you really, truly understand who the stakeholders are. Because what we found out was that this was a well-defined thing that the salesperson knew, and that information wasn't transferred very well. And so I was working with one group of people, whereas another group of people had some expectations that we weren't meeting. So I am a big time process nerd, so clearly a very detailed process came out of that that would hopefully capture and solve for a lot of that stuff. But I would say sort of always be asking questions about, are we meeting everybody's expectations? Are there other people we need to be talking to? And make sure you really do have a good understanding of the decision makers and stakeholders involved that could influence your business, even if they're not your day-to-day people.
From the executive stakeholder down, you need to be able to understand what their definition of success is, and for every level, subsequent level below them, what their definitions of success are, and how that feeds into the primary stakeholder's definition of success.
Yeah. And I would say especially look for those sideways ones, right?
Yep.
Somebody who's not maybe in the direct line of reporting for the people that you're working with, but somebody who's very invested or has control in some way. I think a lot about the fact that we're implementing an IoT platform. So there's hardware, right?
Right.
And we've been completely sidelined before by some like random IT guy in the building who just decided that because we didn't talk to him early enough in the process, he's just gonna, no, it's not happening. And yeah, is that a total power move? Yeah, it
Totally.
really has nothing to do with the fact that, you know, the solution is a problem. It's just that they have felt excluded from that decision-making process. So look for those sideways ones as well.
So building the relationship, it's not just about building the relationship, which is great. It's great through a relationship builder, but at the end of the day, if the key people, the key stakeholders aren't getting value, it doesn't matter how great your relationship is with any of those stakeholders.
Yeah.
They can't justify the spend.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to. Yeah, that's a painful one. I can understand that. All right, so now stepping back from the horror stories, what is the most valuable piece of advice that you've been given when you were starting out in customer success? And I'll let you guys think about that for a second. If anybody's got something whoever wants to start can jump in. Yes, Sarah Jo.
It's very top of mind. And I would say it's being able to say, I don't know, to the customer on the call when they have a question about the product or something that's on the roadmap that isn't really crystal clear for you. And to be able to say, I don't know the answer to that, let me get back to you. I don't want to give you misinformation. So it is that. It sounds really simple, but sometimes after, you know, wearing the hat for a while, you want to build that trusted relationship, and you want to be able to answer all your questions, that's your job, right? And solve pain points from them. But when you really don't know the answer to something, you have to be able to say that.
Yeah, and I just want to dovetail off of what you just said. I would say know when to bring in a subject matter expert. Like, you're going to be responsible for the communication, but if you need to bring in, you know, the head of IT or the head of data science, like, know when to loop those people in so that you can get the client all the information they need.
So Sarah Jo, and Dimple, I used to combine that. And and I agree with you. You know, it's important to be honest with the customer if you don't know. But depending on who your audience is, I've tailored that message to, I've got an idea, but I'm not the expert at this. So let me go ask Jay, who is the expert, and let me get back to you.
Yep.
Right. That way you're not necessarily admitting that you don't know, because sometimes, depending on who you're talking to, they might look at that as a weakness.
Yeah.
But you're also not taking them down the wrong path.
Right.
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 Ashley, you got something for us?
Yeah. So I guess a bit of advice that someone gave me that actually totally fleshed out, and I actually got to see it happen, which was super valuable, was, you know, for every 2 steps you take now to be proactive, you'll save yourself 10 steps down the road in reactive work. And it's always something that I've tried to keep front of mind. But I think it really, really showed how valuable it was. The last software project I was working on before I started working with Essity, went from having a relatively small number of users to a very large number of users really quickly. There was just a precipice in the sales process, and it just hit like a brick wall. And we were really saved by the fact that we had designed all of our processes and all of our ways of working to withstand that type of volume, even though we didn't need to at the time we were designing those things, right? It was all like, but what about when? What about when? And that's a very like fun, optimistic world to live in anyway, right? It's good for morale, but also you will thank yourself a million times over when you actually are prepared for the unexpected. And I think that's really core to the understanding of what CSM is too, right? Like if we drive forward the fact that CSM is in a lot of ways defined as that proactive approach to customer management. I think it fits really nicely to make sure we're always keeping that front of mind, both in our ways that we deal with our customers, right? Don't be reactive, don't be fixing problems as much as you are anticipating them. But even when you're talking about projects and scaling and things like that, that is probably the thing I lean on most.
Yeah, and I think it's natural, especially with you being a process nerd. I'm a process nerd myself, right? And we just by our nature, and part of our methodology is let's not focus on the trailing indicators, right, of churn and renewals and things like that. What we really should be focused on is making sure that the right people are doing the right things in the right ways at the right times.
Yeah.
So that's truly being proactive, right? When we run our businesses, especially our customer success teams, based off of metrics.
Yeah.
If we base our decisions off of the metrics, if you're going to do it based off the metrics, off the leading metrics, are we doing the right things and how are we doing them? That makes sense. Basing them off of the trailing metrics, usage, churn, things like that. It's it's too late, right? Rear view mirror stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
Something really quickly. Something that I've learned in terms of one of the key pieces of advice, I would say persistence is key. So, don't give up. Like, I've had situations where a client had said that they're thinking of churning or they're thinking of leaving. And then I'd say, well, give us one more chance. Like, let us show you what we can do. And then put together like a killer deck for them. And then they decided to maybe extend their partnership for another 3 months. I've actually had 2 or 3 situations like that have happened. And I think that being persistent, really doing right by the customer, and if you know that your product works for them and you're able to drive incremental value, then it's important to do everything in your power to show them that and really communicate that to them so that they feel like they got the most out of each relationship, and they can feel like they can continue on based on the knowledge that you provided them.
I think a lot of people find that when a customer is actually reaching out to you and telling you that they want to leave, that's actually a good thing. They're giving you an opportunity,
right,
to save them. As and because the customer who really wants to leave is just going to leave.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
So the one piece of advice that I was given, and it wasn't even called customer success back in the day, was half of being smart is knowing what you're not smart about, what you're not smart at, right? So that kind of plays into what you all talked about, right? Understand what you don't know, and then either figure it out or get the support you need to figure it out. Cool. We have a few attendees listening in. If there's anybody out there that has any questions that they want to that they have for the group, please go ahead and use the Q&A function, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. And my support staff, Ashley, is behind the scenes and we'll field those questions for us. Cool. Anything else that y'all were thinking about with regards to this subject that we didn't cover?
I wanted to share one thing. I don't know if we explicitly called this out, but I polled a few fellow CSMs at LinkedIn Learning that have just started in the last few months / weeks. And I asked them what the top 3 things for them are. And so they just shouted from the rooftops around shadowing calls. So again, I don't know what onboarding looks like in other companies, but how do you get on live calls? How do you listen to recorded calls and all the different variety of calls? So really understanding the different approaches and styles as well.
No, it's a great, that's a great tool. You learn the shtick, right? Yeah. By hearing other people.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, we got a question here. What did you do first in a job that convinced your manager that you were a good hire? Ooh. There you go. That's one, or a bad hire. Let's focus on the good.
I have one if nobody else does.
Okay.
Okay, so I was at an in-person meeting where I was in a room with the customer and also my boss and her boss. So it was a room full of people. I was brand new. It was one of my very first customer visits. I was there in a bit of a passive observing capacity. And we ended up realizing pretty quickly that the customer we were dealing with is one of those people who challenges just to challenge, right? That it is a type. They exist.
Yeah, it is very much. Yep.
And he was really good at it, right? So it would just so happen that the rest of the people in the room were a little bit taken aback by it, right? They don't do as much customer facing stuff as some of us do. So I took the opportunity to show off a little bit, right? And jump in and sort of play the game with this guy the way he wanted to, just the right amount of banter, but at the same time, providing the answers that he wanted to hear and things like that. And I think it took the pressure off of the rest of the people in the room as well, which is, it's something we're good at. We're people. Otherwise we wouldn't be doing this, right? So I would say if you're really new and you are really confident that there's a situation that you can really provide value to, don't be afraid to actually step in and offer your help. And people will either tell you to shut up or they will really see the value in it, right? And in either way, you're not hurting yourself really in any way. It ended up being really a valuable thing that I had done, and bought me a ticket to deal with that really challenging customer for the rest of time. But
oh, you're great at this, so you get that, right?
Oh, good. You can just be the only person that talks to that guy.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing. You earn that individual's respect.
Yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
which is huge. It's like, oh, this person actually challenged me back.
Yeah. And I think a lot of new people to any role have a tendency to kind of not want to speak up in those types of situations. And I'm a big proponent of just go for it. You can't do that much damage, right?
Well, now, what about, do you temper that with, find out what the rules of engagement are for that particular meeting?
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I contribute, or do you just want me to be a fly on the wall type of thing with whoever's leading the meeting?
Yep. Absolutely.
I wanted to chime in on this question.
Sure.
I love, by the way, Ashley, the taking intelligent risks. That's a really important value in starting a new job and showing up. And to kind of share with your manager that you're a good hire, I would say really leverage and lean in on your teammates and being able to solve a lot of your questions without asking your manager. And so that's part of that building relationships. And your manager may not have been in role that you're in for a while. So they're not going to know the answers to a lot of the questions necessarily right off the top of their head. So you got to really leverage your team. And then I would also say is think about what is important from your manager's perspective. What is going on in their day-to-day? What kind of things are they looking to solve? And then really keeping your eyes and ears open and helping think through and solve them with them. Or when you're bringing a problem to them, have solutions ready to go, right? That's
Love that. Yeah. I used to tell the people who used to work for me, I'm like, don't come to me with just problems. Come to me with a problem and a solution, right? Because if you come to me with your problem, you're just griping. Yeah. Right. So bring me a solution. But I love what you just talked about, Sarah Jo. What that demonstrates is that you're a self-starter, that you're resourceful, and that you're a problem solver. All three things that you want to shine, you know, in front of your boss. All three things, especially for this role, you're going to shine with. Cool. All right, thank you, by the way, Sonia, for that question. We got another one from who's this other one from? Michelle. How do you deal with Karen clients? Difficult, high maintenance ones. Any advice? I've never heard the.
Oh, Karen.
It's a Karen, like I'm Karen.
Like, oh my God, Karen.
There's somebody named Karen. It's always going to be difficult.
I thought you said Karen.
I'm trying to think if I know a Karen and if they're a difficult person. What do you think? How do you deal with those difficult, high maintenance ones?
Well, I would say when you know someone is challenging and maybe high maintenance, you know, really understand what they're trying to get at in terms of maybe there's the place that you're butting heads. They want an answer to a specific question that they asked, and you're not really getting them that answer. I would say, you know, going back to what I had said previously, know when to get on the phone, know when to get in front of them, and really try to put an end to some of this back and forth banter that you may be having. And it's important to understand their personality. If they are challenging, embrace it. Like it's really an opportunity for you to realize that as a customer success manager, you're going to have to be working with all different types of personalities, and really to embrace the ones that are challenging, because they're the ones at the end of the day, I feel like, are going to help you grow and are going to help you really like become that person that can really deal with all different personalities.
Well, to your point, and actually back to your story, there are just some people who are that way.
But I think if you work at it, right, and it's a really difficult thing to sort of be of two minds in a conversation, right, to be thinking about the meat and potatoes of the conversation, but at the same time, right, for lack of a better way of putting it, psychoanalyzing this person, right? You have to be understanding why they're saying and thinking the things that they're saying and thinking. And I think if you can identify the point of pain that's causing them to get to that place, or you know, sometimes it's an underlying thing that's not even in your control, right? Maybe it's just that their day is just so swamped that getting into a rabbit hole that makes them think in a really sort of obtuse way, just it makes them uncomfortable, right? But if you can identify that thing, there's usually something you can do or something you can adjust in your approach that might be seemingly really minor, might get you a much better reaction. So I really try to, and I have a tendency to take notes in sort of two columns in that type of a conversation. You know, what are the notes that I need to be like, hey, this is a follow-up item for me. I need to actually complete this action. You know, they have a problem here. But also what's going on with this person and what can I do to make that relationship better as we go forward, and really trying to put yourself in well, why are they so upset about this thing, even though it seems irrational, right? Or, you know, what is the underlying implication that's leading them to believe this? And trying to keep notes on both of those at the same time.
And that's a good thing to remember. There could be things well outside of work-related issues that are causing this person to react the way that they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, there's more than just what you're helping them with. Right, there's a lot of other things going on in their worlds.
Yep, yep, exactly.
So we got another question here from Ryan. Hi, for someone who has no CSM experience but retail management experience, what would you recommend to them to stand out in a resume or interview? I want to jump in on this really quick because we've done some recruiting. Ryan, one of the things that first of all, I think is going to be really important for you if you're trying to get into a CS role is to go find a company that has a retail product. You know, use that domain expertise to your advantage. That is the best way that I have found to pivot from a non-CS role into CS is by leveraging the domain experience that you do possess. You know, the one nice thing that you do have with retail is, especially retail management experience, is that you've dealt with customers, and you've probably dealt with customers that are frustrated. As I was saying before we started the webinar, and my frustration with a particular retail chain this week. So being able to handle that is actually a really strong skill. It's a really important skill and a strong skill to have in customer success. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
I think that.
Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Dimple, we think too much alike. I think that's the problem. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. I would say, like, this is just something I'm thinking about from my retail experience. Like when I go shop somewhere or whatnot, I often get an email afterwards. Take a survey. What did you think of the experience? And if you have gotten positive feedback on the help that you've provided to customers, leverage that. You know, give them examples of times when you've gotten positive reviews, so that you can tell your future employer that you have that direct experience of solving challenging situations, and at the end of the call or at the end of the meeting, ending up on a happy note.
Yeah.
Being a CSM, if you think about it, it's like a three-legged stool, right? It's, having the EQ, having your product experience, and having domain experience so you can speak intelligently with a customer. So even if you're not a traditional CSM, for example, in Ryan's case, you've got the retail experience, you've got the domain experience, you've got to have some EQ if you were effective dealing with customers. So then it's just a matter of learning the product. And so you want to play off of, especially in the resume, in the interview process, you want to play off of the domain experience and the EQ, because the product we can teach you, right? Because we're got to teach everybody the product. And that's how I would frame it.
Love that.
Yep.
I would just add this kind of goes into the EQ stuff, but just having those stories, those narratives around examples where you've solved problems and how you've scaled that for the company in different ways. Certainly as a retail manager, you've probably done that. And because as CSMs, that's one of our main focuses is how do we solve something and then scale it to solve a business need as well. So that would be just keeping some of those stories front and center.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Make it relatable.
I think one of my favorite things about the industry of customer success is the willingness to share knowledge. Prime example, what we're doing right now, right? But there are so many free things out there that you don't need your company to sponsor you for. So many webinars, so many articles, materials, things like that, where you can really get into deep diving into the things that customer success is. And you'll start to naturally draw your own parallels to your own experience as you listen to other people talk about their customer experiences, their experiences as a CSM, and the things that they find valuable in their practice as a CSM. It'll prepare you. It's not necessarily a resume line item. Like, yes, you can go get certifications for your resume and things like that. But really the more important thing to me when I'm interviewing a potential CSM is, how do they draw parallels to the experiences that they've had and how the skills that they've developed from those experiences will help them in this position. And being able to interview really strongly in that way, I think is going to really improve, your chances, I guess. So go out there and find all the stuff, right? It's there for you.
Shameless plug for the success coaching stuff, by the way.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's it's not free, but it's pretty it's pretty competitively priced given the type of the type of or the size of the deals that most especially B2B CSMs are dealing with. So great. This was a great conversation. I'm glad we got some attendees asking questions. I appreciate your time. It was wonderful. And please let us know if you want to participate in one of these again.
Okay.
Thank you. so much.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. It was
Thank
a
you,
pleasure.
everyone. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Andrew.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
Yes, and thank you, Ashley, our big toe. Thank you, Ashley.
Not me, Ashley, the other
Not
Ashley.
the other Ashley. Ashley. Not the Cowboys fan. Ashley.
Yeah.
Have a great afternoon, everyone. See ya.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.